Season 5 of 3830. This season, for those of you who are joining us, okay, this season is entitled Strange Fruit, addressing the violent erasure of Black bodies. And tonight's episode is with, and now I know you're like, you always have to say a dear friend of mine, but I mean it, a dear friend of mine, someone who I enjoy working with, but just admire so very much, Dr. Shani Buggs. On Research as Activism is the title of our episode this evening. You remember last episode with Dr. Sean McGuffey, we gave you a little flavor, started talking about that, particularly as it pertains to Black researchers and the way that we move and the way that we do work in collaboration with community. So tonight we're just taking a deeper dive into that discussion. Once again, for those of you who are new to 30 at 8:30, 3830 is an Instagram live show brought to you by The Crib, where every Wednesday night, for just 30 minutes, we hold the space to discuss challenging issues that impact some of our most vulnerable communities. And we hold the space and have these conversations from both our head and our heart space. So tonight we are going to do the same thing with Dr. Shani Buggs. Hey, Shani. All right, so I'm gonna read your bio, and then I'm gonna brag about you a little bit because I was like, this child does so much. But anyway, okay, I'm bragging about you. So Dr. Shani Buggs is a public health and policy researcher and an assistant professor in the Department of Emergency Medicine at the University of California, Davis. Her expertise includes community-level firearm violence prevention programs and policies, transformative first response strategies, and comprehensive approaches to creating community safety through policies and programs at all levels of government. And when I tell y'all, she's a beast, but she's humble, but she is a beast doing so much leadership. Anyway, I'm gonna stick to the script for a second. Dr. Buggs has worked with leaders around the U.S. to help coordinate and advise violence prevention efforts. In her research, she strives to center the experiences of those most impacted by violence to inform policies that foster equity, safety, and well-being for families and communities. She is also a Crib faculty affiliate, and I always say this, but she is a very dear friend of mine, but also someone who walks with tremendous humility and grace, and is someone who deliberately brings everyone that she meets into the fold to do this work. And I am just grateful to be doing the work by her side. So Crib community, you give Dr. Buggs a shout out, a warm welcome like nobody else can. Let's go. Let's see those hearts. Let's see those love, that fire. Welcome, honey.
That was such a lovely intro. Thank you. Thank you.
God. And also thank you for being here because I know you be doing some work right now. You just, yeah. So I appreciate you. Let's get started.
Create space every Wednesday to make this happen. And so thank you for your leadership, for your, for creating space for the conversations, for the love that you show to our people. Thank you. Thank you dearly.
Thanks so much. Thank you. All right, let's get started. So really quick, it's a question we ask all of our guests. What drew you to this work? What drew you to the work?
Yeah, that question could take the whole 30 minutes, but I will say the short version is truthfully I felt called to it. So if we go back about 12 years, as I was deciding to go to grad school for master's in public health. I had been working in corporate America for a decade. and was working in workplace wellness. And so a master's of public health was fitting for the work that I was doing. And I was fortunate enough to go from Atlanta, where I was living at the time, to Baltimore to study at Johns Hopkins. And within a few weeks of being in the Masters of Public Health program, the Aurora, Colorado movie theater shooting happened. And, that was a multi-casualty shooting. And it got tremendous attention from the media and outrage from policymakers, as it deserved to. But I was in Baltimore, and I was at Johns Hopkins in East Baltimore, and shootings were happening far too frequently and not making nightly news sometimes, not even making it to the paper. But the people who live in East Baltimore were no less devastated, no less outraged, no less heartbroken by the impact of their communities, but they were not getting the deserved attention and outrage, calls for action. And I happened to be at Hopkins, which at the time was the only academic in the country that had an academic research center devoted to policy and research. And it was, there were critical mass of researchers there who had dedicated at least a portion of their careers to studying firearm solutions to gun violence. And so, long story short, I quit the job that I had intended to go back to. I sold my house in Atlanta. I moved. I was a broke ass graduate student. In my 30s, it was living a life in Atlanta. I felt, because there was no logical reason for the decision. But
No, it was very logical.
I had incredible mentorship and guidance, and the people of Baltimore welcomed me and loved me, said, we need you to tell, we need you to help do something. And so that, fast forward, here I am.
Wow. Shani, I've known you for quite some time, having met each other in Baltimore and having our paths cross because of our similar interests. I don't think I ever knew that story about you coming from the corporate world. But what also resonates with me and helps me understand our strong sisterhood and connection. When you walk with someone and you don't have to sort of explain what you're thinking because you're on that same sort of page, the way that you describe how you started on this work, our paths are very similar, but in particular, the words you use when you say I was called to do this work. It is there's no question in my head and heart that I was called to do this work. And so it just makes so much sense in terms of how we kind of vibe. So thank you so much. And thank you for answering the call. Sure. So I want to sort of delve into the context of tonight's episode, because we've talked about this in our own work with the collective, which I'm sure you'll talk about a little bit more, about research as activism. So in that context, how do you see your role specifically in research as activism as a means to address the ongoing systemic erasure of Black communities?
That is a powerful question. As I said, and you repeated, I felt called to do this work, and I felt called because, part of answering the call was recognizing that when you talk to people who have been impacted by gun violence, whether it be once or whether it be many, many times, and the systematic investment in Black and Brown communities in the United States means that Black and Brown communities are disproportionately impacted by gun violence. And when you talk to people who live in those communities, the narratives around what they need, why the violence occurred, what healing and recovery should look like, it too often doesn't match the ways that the narratives are shared in the media. It doesn't match that policymakers approach the issue. And so the work that I did in Baltimore really helped to illuminate that disconnect between published in the peer-reviewed literature around what we should do around gun violence and what the realities are, whether it be realities, and more importantly, the lived realities of people who live in communities that are impacted by gun violence. And so research is for me, I see my role as a researcher using my platform and my privilege and my credibility in the academic world and in the policymaking world as giving voice to those individuals. And it's not speaking for them, it's elevating their experiences and their voices through my work. And so the activism part to me is really acknowledging their truths and using the tools that I have, the doors that I have open to me to give their voices the credibility they deserve, to give their voices the gravity and the to demand. And so I think myself really as a conduit. And so so the work that I do is really about addressing those structural and environmental factors. Saying they absolutely change. They absolutely need if community is going to thrive, if they are going to live peacefully and liberated. There has to be this change. And so that's to me how I approach research and why research is activism to me, because it's about addressing those structural and social factors that must change if communities are to live in peace.
That's right. Structural inequities are inherently structurally violent. And we cannot sit back and be surprised when you deprive someone of access to clean drinking water, affordable housing, decent housing, educational opportunities, a sense of safety and well-being, that we now also see forms of violence in its many forms dramatically impacting our community. 100%, 100%. I also love the fact that you really talk about not speaking for, but uplifting the voices, being used as a vessel, if you will, to do this work. I was saying in the last week's episode with Dawn that I don't see any other way to do it. I don't see any other way to do the work without centering the voices, without taking direction from the communities we've been called to serve. I don't see any other way. However, and I know this is sort of a question off the dome, but it's so interesting working and doing the work in spaces where the way that we move and how we move is not always there's not always space held for that, right? So it's often a heavy lift. But what I love about it is I've found a sense of community with people like yourselves who we can support one another in this journey, So it feels good. Okay, I'm rambling.
It's so, that community, I mean, literally sustains us. It sustains me knowing that there are others who, we can't just do research for research's sake. That's not what we're here. I'm not here for.
Not at all.
I would very much not have a career in gun violence prevention research.
Right.
Put me out of please.
Put us out of the business.
I like this. I like I said, I had a good, happy, comfortable, blissful life.
Yeah.
And I think it's so cool to have that community because its work is hard. This work is traumatic. It is devastating. There's just there's so many people suffering and hurting and not being heard. And so having a community in the research space where we're privileged to be able to sit behind a computer. Yes, we can touch the community, work in the community, and we have privilege to be, somewhat removed. And so I think all of the feelings that come and the stressors that come, as you said, with doing the work that we do because we don't have a choice. I don't have a choice. But to be engaged in the community, but to have researchers who get that and understand that is such a blessing to have found a community. Because it was not when I signed up for it was and here for you you're going through.
So and I think this actually sort of piggybacks on that comment. Researchers of color have a unique perspective and lens they bring to violence prevention research due to their positionality, the intersection of lived experiences, and racial and ethnic identity, combined with their motivation, as you've mentioned, to urgently see radical change that brings peace and liberation to the lives of families that are or resemble their own, and yet all too often, their research is underfunded and undervalued. How should the erasure of their contributions, Black and brown researchers' contributions, how should it be addressed?
Well, I think, you mentioned at the outset the collective, and for the Crip community, for those on live who don't know, the Black and Brown Collective is a network organization of gun violence prevention scholars all over the country, international, with a Canadian representative, that we came together because of the frustration of exactly what we're about, that these are brilliant scholars in various who approach the issue of gun violence in various ways, but all with the same passion for addressing structural violence and community violence, recognize that community is at the center of the solutions. And I think the ways that we address that, perennial underfunding of the work and the scholarship of violence research, the ways that we address the erasure of their voices and their contribution has to be explicit through funding. It has to be explicit in ensuring that equity is upheld in the ways that we tell the stories about what gun violence is, why it occurs, what we should be looking to and for not just reducing violence, but producing peace and producing well-being. And so it requires, in 2020, there were a lot of declarations about recognizing that racism, that police violence is structural violence, it is gun violence, that structural racism must be dealt with. And here we are in 2023, and we see very clearly the backlash to just those very calls. And so talking about how to address stuff and how do we of voices, it has to be explicit, and it has to not just be in words and in black squares on Instagram or through promises addressing equity. It has to be through action, and part of that action is addressing that underfunding of gun researchers who are from the communities that are most directly impacted, who are representing, who are uplifting the voice communities. And it's true across, we're talking about, but that's the work we do, but it's true in housing, it's true in education, it's true in the criminal legal system, it's true in all of the sectors and structures that govern our lives, that we have to be explicit in creating equity in the research and policy making and the action. And so addressing that, doubling down on those stated commitments through action.
Definitely being intentional. Definitely being intentional about backing up the words and the promises of how we can create sustainable change. And what I love, and Crib community, there is so much that we are going to be sharing with you in our time together as we journey together about the collective that you ain't ready. You ain't ready. These folks, y'all. And I love the fact, again, I feel like it's without even speaking, I keep saying the way that we move, because that's what it feels like collectively we move as one, that we do it with such a wonderful equitable framework, emancipatory framework lens through our work, through our language, and through our intentional partnership, centering the lives of community members that have been impacted. So, and also, I also love the intentionality behind acknowledging all of the work, despite being underfunded, that has been done, that we all have already been doing, that needs to be cited and uplifted and incorporated into some of the prevention and intervention strategies. So y'all stay tuned, because the collective is coming at you. Oh my gosh, we are not.
We are not. Wait.
We are not. We are not waiting. All right. So much to say. Okay, in your work specifically on violence prevention programs, you often highlight, and I really want to bring this up because we saw so much of this so prevalently when I think about JT and Dante and Safe Streets and the folks that we love so much in Baltimore. In your work on violence prevention programs, you often highlight the ways in which community-based expertise, in particular outreach workers, should be included in the design and implementation of solutions to prevent gun violence. Why is censoring the experiences of community-based experiences necessary to address the systemic erasure of Black communities, and how can their perspectives contribute to the sustainability of research as activism? I know, it's a lot. I know. But Shani, I just got excited. I was like, all the things.
Oh, well, I mean, so I don't know if she is still on, but Esmeralda was part of the community she joined earlier. She is a violence prevention worker at the UC Davis Medical Center wraparound program, the hospital-based violence program that I am fortunate to be connected to. And, I said that I started my work in Baltimore, working with the very people you mentioned, JT, Dante, another Dante Johnson, folks who do violence intervention work. I don't know how much your CRIP community knows what violence intervention is, looks like or what that, what it entails. But they do this work with no guns, with no bulletproof vests. They do this work with their credibility, with their heart, with their love for community, with their empathy, with their humanity, and recognizing that people who have been violently injured, people who are involved in violence, are people, um, and they touch a lot of people. So they see a lot. The intervention um,
Go to spaces and places.
go into
Not everybody can go.
not everybody can go where people don't want to go because they're told that that neighborhood, that street corner, those people over there are dangerous or scary. And violence intervention workers go into those underfunded, underpaid. They go into it out of their love for community. And so their perspective on the challenges of people who are at violence, and I think it's important to recognize that the only ways that we address violence sustainably is by talking to people who are at the center of the problem. You cannot address the problem without knowing exactly what's going on. And so the violence intervention workers, dedicate their lives selfishly. I mean, selflessly, and truly, have sometimes put themselves in harm's way in order to bring peace to. And so their expertise is just invaluable to our understanding of the problem because they touch person after person. So their ability to understand patterns and trends, which is what research is all about, understanding, epidemiologic research is about patterns and trends, observations of factors or risk factors or what have you. And so their expertise is critical to me. It's critical to understand. And many of them also have been, victims of violence themselves. They've been experiencing violence themselves. They have
So many ways.
in many ways, they have family members, they themselves have been, have been touched by violence, have experienced the traumatic devastation of violence. And so their perspectives also of what redemption looks like, what transformation looks like, what healing looks like, is also critical to the story. And so I see their work as, I feel fortunate every day to be able to engage with to do that work because it is hard. It is whew, it is serious work. And the people who I know that do that work are phenomenal human beings who, do it simply because they don't want the erasure of Black bodies. They don't want the erasure of their communities, of their families. And so my research activism is lifting their voices and their is everyone else in communities that are impacted by gun violence.
When I'm going to be honest. I am thinking so much about Dante, who's no longer with us, and the invaluable lessons that I learned from both Dante and JT. But the fact that they took a chance on me, they didn't know me from Adam, but they watched the way that I moved, the words that I said, and they brought me into a fold like family. And we, through their outreach as activism, I think it poured into a cup of work, a body of work that I would not have been able to do without them. Down to things like creating curriculum together, writing grants together, and listening to them and being able to translate on paper. And I just, sorry, I'm getting emotional, but I'm so very grateful for that relationship, um, uh, and that area of expertise that they shared with me. It just is something that I will always and do take with me. So yeah, yeah.
If I appreciate you saying that because actually I am at a conference. JT is here at this conference. Every here at the conference. And every time I see JT, he shows me love. And if I, I appreciate you saying that because when I think back on my time in Baltimore, it truly is experience with Safe Street, experiences with Safe Street that raised my awareness of violence intervention and prevention, the work, but also the humans behind it, the incredible love that they have for community, the ways that they show up, the way, super grateful now that there is being paid and recognition being given to violence intervention and prevention workers, professionals, people who deserve the same benefits, pay as the public safety professionals that we fund the city taxpayer dollars, and they are absolutely, they have shaped the way that I see the work, the ways that I approach the work, and so much of what I do is really, I had not thought about it, but when I look back on it now, it really is in honor and appreciation for their work.
Wow.
Yeah.
You need to call JP when you're next to him, and like you need to FaceTime me because I would just love to see him. And he just had a birthday. Tell him I said happy birthday.
Yeah.
Wow. I could talk to you all night, and I know, but I'm not going to do that because I know you have stuff to do. But wow, you just brought back a flood of memories. Just really good memories. Really good memories. I want to ask you a question that we ask all of our guests in closing, which is, as Black researchers, we are often driven to do this work as a means of responding to the urgent, deeply rooted call to serve our communities, who continue to be over-policed in many forms. With that sense of urgent responsibility comes a level of resolute perseverance and complex traumatic assault that is persistent. How do you care for yourself, Shani? How do you care for yourself while doing this necessary work? Of course, I'm asking her, y'all, while she's like at a conference presenting, writing grants,
writing proposals, yeah, doing all
you know. Like, I'm trying to answer that right now, but we're on the line, Tanya.
And my girl Kersha was on. I don't know if Kersha is still in the house. Kersha is a therapist, and I feel like Kersha should come on and tell us how we should be caring for ourselves, because I don't know either of us. I think it is truly like I so much from my community, from my village. I saw Christina Gilardi on, Tia Hairston on, I see Catherine Bell on. These are part of my village in Sacramento, and I'm deeply grateful for them, and rely on their presence and their love for me, their understanding that my life can be crazy, that I can be doing all the things at all the times. But that is just a piece that is not fully the self-care that you're talking about. And I think it is important to always remember that as much give to. I am a person in all of this expansive world. And so, and life is short, and the work that we do reminds us of the precious fragility. Um, and so the ways that I myself are to remind myself of that, and get to step away. I give myself permission to love on myself, to be quiet, still, to enjoy the ratchetry that is love is blind, to to just to read fiction, and Afrofuturism, and to go on nature hikes. Being in California, to be hiking, and um, and get away. I love staring at the stars. I love chasing meteors. I love by the water. And Sacramento has 2 rivers. So those are the various ways that I must go be in nature to rid myself and still myself. But I think the biggest part for me is giving myself permission back, and I don't do that often enough. But it is critical. It is part of how I see here.
Practice and pouring into oneself is so necessary. So necessary. So, Crip community, check on your friends. Just check on your friends. Make sure they're doing okay. Ask them how they're doing. But thank you for that. Thank you for that, Johnny. I'm so grateful that you took time out this evening to join us. I really, really do appreciate you. And I look forward to seeing you soon. Seeing you soon. But again, thank you so much, my sister. Thank you for, again, responding to the call to serve in this way. Truly, truly honored to work with you and beside you.
Thank
truly.
you. Thank you. I am so grateful that you were part of my community, part of my sisterhood, circle of sister friends and the work. I am super excited to see you soon. And again, thank you for creating the space. Thank you for what you do for the Crip community, for all of us. You see me. You have seen me. You saw me in Baltimore. We bonded very, very quickly. And I forever be grateful for that. So thank you.
Always this. Oh my gosh. Listen, I am teasing right now. My cup is full. My heart is full. Thank you again, Crib community, for joining us. Thank you, Dr. Buggs, for joining us. And Crib community, you know how we do when we sign off. From our crib to yours, stay safe and keep well. Good night.